Hello everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. Today I want to talk about a risk indicator for Bitcoin and whether or not it might offer some insights into where Bitcoin could be heading next. If you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us on Twitter. So what I'm showing you here is a graph that's similar to ones that you've probably seen in the past if you've been following the channel. Although what I want to focus on today is instead of looking at the price action color-coded to our model, I'm just going to skip ahead right here to the raw output of our upside and downside potential indicator, our risk model, like UDPI. So again, 5 is high risk, -5 is low risk. So what I want to do is to look at where we are currently with Bitcoin and kind of observe the pattern that the UDPI has been printing over the last couple months. What we can see is we get this kind of distinct pattern that we see here where the UDPI kind of shot up into September, kind of then corrected as we got a correction in Bitcoin's price, kind of fell, and then now we're back up to the upside. So it's kind of this down, up, down pattern that it ended up printing here. And what I want to talk about is, are there times in Bitcoin's past, in its history, when it's printed a similar kind of pattern, this up, down, up type pattern, and then just look at what did Bitcoin do next? Is this kind of a pattern, has it been likely to lead to upside or to downside in the future, and just see if it's led to both, which direction maybe we might be able to speculate might be more likely. And so the 2 points that I think look most similar to this kind of move in the past are this point back here in 2017, a relatively similar risk level where Bitcoin went up, down, and then up into this big parabolic move to the top of that 2017 run. But also, if we look over here in 2019, there's also this pattern where Bitcoin went up, there's also a down here, and then up again, and then this led to more of a bearish pattern, kind of this more bearish point where we kind of went into this downtrend leading into the March 2020, that big crash before we were able to finally get back up and put in a new all-time high then in that run in the spring. So what I want to do is switch over to TradingView, take a look at the moves that followed these, and then just kind of speculate about which direction we might expect Bitcoin to go after showing that kind of pattern again. Do we speculate the more bullish scenario, or maybe we can speculate the more bearish scenario? Which one seems to be being followed more closely currently? So let's go ahead and switch over here to TradingView. So what I'm showing you here is just the price of Bitcoin on the daily chart. And right over here, we're back in 2017, and this is the move that I identified there as that point in 2017 where the UDPI put in this up, down, up kind of a pattern as it was observing Bitcoin's price action. And so we kind of had that pattern, and then this is what kind of resulted from that pattern, this big parabolic move to what was then the all-time high for the next while, around 20K. So that's one pattern that followed from that kind of UDPI pattern. The other one that followed from that kind of pattern at similar risk level was this one right here, coming off of this move up in 2019. You'll see there was this big run up, and then the UDPI printed, again, this kind of up, down, up pattern as it observed this behavior, and then this is kind of what followed afterwards, this downtrend, ultimately leading to this big capitulation that we saw in March of 2020. So the thing that I think is important to think about in terms of thinking about these is first of all, just in terms of where we are in the market cycle, do we seem to be more in a similar place where we were in 2017 or in 2019? One thing I think is important to note is that if we compare if we look at this move in 2017, one thing that's I think important to note is that we were above the previous all-time high that was put in December at that point, right? So this big bull run that Bitcoin was having up to that point, it already well passed the all-time high back here, and so it was sitting well above that point before it went in to make that final push, that final run, where the UDPI had printed that up, down, up pattern, where it then shot up to the top here. And that's different from 2019. So in 2019, it had failed to break the all-time high that at that time was still set in 2017. It had not managed to break above that pattern, and so it kind of hadn't confirmed that it was in this kind of big bull move. It hadn't actually been able to put in that new all-time high to go into price discovery. It was still kind of underneath where it was before. So that's definitely a difference, right? It's a heck of a lot more of a bullish place to be if you've just blown past the previous all-time high. It's a little bit more doubt in the sustainability of that move if it hasn't yet been able to put in that new all-time high and go into price discovery mode. And of course, currently where we are now, we have put in a new all-time high. Bitcoin has passed its previous all-time high put in the spring, and so that would be a similarity as shares with the 2017, this point in 2017 right here, that versus this point here in 2019. So if we zoom over to where we are today, what I've done here is I've basically just taken those fractals that followed from that kind of pattern that the UDPI put in, so that up, down, up kind of move, and just overlaid them on the current Bitcoin price chart. So again, this is kind of a questionable exercise, right? You can never just take a fractal from the past and expect an asset like Bitcoin to just perfectly follow it. Like that's just not going to happen. Really, what I've done here is just to show some comparisons, right? That in the past, this is one move that Bitcoin did off of that kind of a pattern from the UDPI. And in the other case, this is the kind of pattern it did after that pattern from the UDPI. And so what we can see if we just look at this, though, is that it does seem like the price of Bitcoin currently has been following this 2017 move a lot more closely than it's been following the 2019 move, right? Bitcoin has been going up, and we've been putting in new all-time high. We've been going, kind of shooting up, whereas here, this would have been this very bearish scenario that just didn't materialize. A lot of bears were calling for this after this kind of pullback we saw in September. A lot of bears were expecting this to be kind of the outcome, if not worse. But in fact, Bitcoin's done kind of the opposite. It's been following this more bullish kind of a pattern. So I want to be clear. I do not think that Bitcoin is just going to go parabolic from here. I don't think that we can just take this to the bank and say, yep, sure enough, Bitcoin's off to the races. I don't think that's reasonable. And in fact, if you just look at the move here, this kind of move is so steep. It's so much more parabolic. It's even more parabolic than anything Bitcoin did back here. I just don't think Bitcoin at this point is really capable of doing that. At its current market cap, at its kind of current level of maturity, I just don't think it's able to kind of sustain these kind of parabolic moves. I think it's going to take a bit more time to do that. But what's, I think, kind of undeniable just looking at this is that what's currently happening seems a lot closer to what was going on in 2017 versus what was going on in 2019. It seems to be much more on the side of the bullish kind of hypothesis than on the bearish hypothesis. And so in reality, what I personally think is probably more likely is that I don't think that Bitcoin's going to be putting in, over 200K by the end of the year. I just don't think it's going to happen. And so my personal opinion is that kind of best case scenario, what Bitcoin will do is at best a more stretched out version of this kind of move, where it's just going to take a little bit more time to kind of make its way up there, and then it'll eventually make its way up to those higher price levels. And probably in my opinion, what could happen is they'll just be putting higher highs, higher lows, kind of a more steady rise up until its ultimate conclusion. And then at some point, it'll have kind of tapped out, become unsustainable, and then a pullback is probably going to follow that. I personally don't buy into the whole narratives about this super cycle where Bitcoin will never have any meaningful corrections ever again. I just don't think that's very likely. Nothing in its past suggests that it's ever going to be free of bear markets. I don't think we can just assume that's going to happen this time. So that's just my personal opinion on that. And again, this is all just conjecture and speculation. You can't be definitive about any of this kind of stuff. This is not, sophisticated data analysis here. I'm just, putting fractals over. But I think it is still useful to do these kind of exercises just to compare that, in these points, the similar points in time for Bitcoin, at least in terms of the UDPI, what has it done in the past? And it sure as heck seems a lot more like the bullish scenario right now than the bearish scenario. So not financial advice. Do your own research. Form your own opinions about where Bitcoin is heading. But this is just one of the things that I've been looking at and thinking about recently, looking at Bitcoin's price chart as it relates to the UDPI. So if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us on Twitter. And remember, with the UDPI, we're all going to make it.